And for our bonus talk tonight, we're going to learn about the #1 vegetable crop of North Dakota, and that is the potato. And we first have to thank our speaker, Dr. Asunta Thompson, or we call her Susie. We want to thank Susie Thompson for her generosity, because all those potato samples that were shipped out to all the county offices across the state, those are from Dr. Thompson. We greatly appreciate her generosity for that. And now let's just learn a little bit about the background of the potato and potato production in North Dakota. And also Dr. Thompson's going to share with us some information about the specific cultivars that you received today. So let's welcome Dr. Thompson to the Spring Fever Forums.
Hi, I'm Susie Thompson, and thank you for being in attendance this evening at the Spring Fever Forums. As Dr. Kell mentioned, I am going to give a little bit of a background about potato and also share some information about production. So as a review, probably for many of you, potato is from the nightshade family. It is one of the Solanaceae, of which there are about 2,000 species. Only 160 out of those 2,000 are actually tuber bearing, and so of course potato is one of those. And of the 160 tuber bearing, there are 20 cultivated species. Our common potato, you also maybe will have heard it referred to as the Irish potato or white potatoes, is Solanum tuberosum L. There we go. And because it is a solanum or from the Solanaceae family, several of our garden vegetables are relatives, things like tomatoes, eggplants, the peppers that we grow, tobacco, which of course we don't find growing in North Dakota, but it is a common crop in the southeastern part of the US, as well as petunias. And one of our worst enemies would be the weed nightshade. We grow the potatoes for their underground tubers. Most of the other solanaceous crops, however, are grown for their botanical fruits, which would be found above ground. And potato is an herbaceous dicot, so it has succulent stems. And in our area, we grow potato as an annual. Potato has its origin in South America, in what we call the Andean region. So if you look on the slide there, the Andes kind of forms that backbone of South America. I think many of us have been taught that potato was indigenous to predominantly Peru. But as you can see in this picture, potato is found native all the way from the tip of southern Chile near Patagonia, all the way into the Four Corners region of the US. And I previously lived in Colorado for a number of years, and even in my own backyard, I could find wild potato species growing. Solanum fendleri is one of those wild potato species that we find in the southwestern US. Many of us are well aware that potatoes are utilized for a multitude of different purposes. Most of us eat them fresh at home, or maybe we have them as baked potatoes at a restaurant, or if we're in a hurry and we drive through the drive-through at our favorite quick serve restaurant, we're probably picking up French fries. Or if we're snacking at home, maybe this past weekend watching the Fighting Sioux play hockey, or during the fall when we're watching the Bison play football, we're probably eating potato chips. And about 88% of our potato production is used for human consumption. 34% of that is for frozen potato products. So obviously French fries would be #1, but also things like tater tots, frozen hash brown patties, things like that would be in that frozen category. About 26% of the potatoes that are produced are used for the fresh market. So that's what we pick up in the grocery store, bring home, or maybe we pick up at our local farmer's market, bring home, make roasted potatoes, potato soup, potato salad, all those kinds of dishes. About 15% of our potatoes are made into potato chips. So again, chip processing. And then also you can find the little cans with the shoestring potatoes. A lot of us like to either snack on those or use them in some really delicious salads. One of my favorites is with shrimp. 12% of our potatoes are dehydrated. So when we go into the grocery store and we're in the aisle where we have dehydrated potato products, we might see these under the Betty Crocker label. They may be something that is more like an au gratin potato, but the predominant one, of course, would be potato flakes, or also you might see them referred to as potato buds. And these can be very handy. I personally don't really like to eat dehydrated potatoes, reconstituted as mashed potatoes, although the products are getting better, but I do like to use potato flakes to thicken soups, whether it be cream of broccoli or my favorite potato chowder. 6% of the potatoes that are produced are for seed potatoes, and North Dakota happens to rank second in the nation for certified seed potato production, second only after Idaho. And 1% of our potatoes are canned. These can be the whole potatoes. Sometimes you'll find them sliced, and also as part of this 1% would be the potatoes that we might find in our favorite brand of soup that would be containing potatoes, a chicken or a vegetable type of soup. So lots of different uses, and the potato is very versatile in that regard. Now, the potato in the media gets a bad rap a lot of days. They're always telling us that it's too fattening, there's no nutritional value. In fact, the First Lady wasn't real keen on potatoes and has kind of had some influence as far as the potato in our school nutrition programs. Thankfully, though, she's starting to see the light and see that they are a versatile vegetable that really is a powerhouse when it comes to nutrition. An average potato, a 5-ounce potato, and I grabbed a couple of potatoes, but between the two of them would be about at 5 ounces. This one would be about 3. So just a nice sized potato is only 100 calories. There are 0 calories of fat. It's all of those things, the delicious gravies, butter, sour cream that people like to add to them that make potatoes fattening. There's no sodium. And nowadays, if you pay attention to food labels, it's amazing all of the foods that you find that have sodium, and especially high levels of sodium. Potassium is one of the standout nutrients. It's very important from our heart health standpoint, and we oftentimes think, if any of you are runners or like to partake in physical activity, we oftentimes think that a banana is a good go-to source. A baked potato actually has more potassium in it than a serving of banana. Potato also has dietary fiber, has a fair amount of protein for being a vegetable. And finally, most of us think about oranges when we think about vitamin C, but even white flesh potatoes have about 45% of our U.S. recommended daily allowance of vitamin C. So hopefully after this, all of you will want to go home and grab potatoes rather than your favorite fruits, or at least you'll think twice about grabbing those favorite fruits. So our next slide I want to talk a little bit about is market classes. And I think people refer to potatoes a lot of times by their color. I tend to refer to them more maybe by their final or their end use. So if you look at our slide here where we have different market classes, up in the upper right hand corner are the round whites. Typically we think of these being for the chip potato market. And from our potato breeding program here at NDSU, most of our round whites, or probably all of them, have chip processing quality. However, in the eastern part of the US, there is a fresh market segment that where consumers and customers prefer to actually purchase white potatoes to use at home for the fresh market. Our round white chip processing cultivars would have what we would call high specific gravity. So they have lower water content, higher starch content. And in that frying process, when we're making potato chips, it's the water that is displaced by the oil. So when we have what we call high dry matter potatoes, we are having to displace less water. We can get more product from the raw potatoes, and they tend to make a crispier as well as a lighter colored product, so more white, less brown or caramely. Then we have our long russet, and there are some long whites for processing. Those are, if you can see the gentleman's hands there, that's our former potato extension agent, Dwayne Preston. Some of you might recognize that name, holding our Dakota Trailblazer out on the potato harvester. And again, we want long, blocky tubers because we get more French fries. Again, we tend to prefer the potatoes that are in higher in dry matter because we are displacing that water during the frying process. And also we like that mealy texture, either when we're making home fries or when we are baking those potatoes in our oven at home and we pop it open, and the higher the dry matter, the lighter and fluffier it will be. Most of us love our reds for the fresh market or for table stock. When I was growing up, I grew up on a seed potato farm. We did everything with red potatoes, including making French fries, and sometimes they would get pretty dark and caramely by this time of the storage season. But the red potatoes can vary a lot in specific gravity. For the most part, though, they tend to be on the lower spectrum, so their texture is a little bit more waxy or a little bit more creamy. And these are what really are ideal for making soups, stews, home fried potatoes. Say you boil some for dinner, the next day you can slice up the leftovers after they've been in your refrigerator overnight with a little bit of butter, onion, salt, and pepper. And they will be delicious and they hold together nice. And then, of course, the last picture that I have there is the heirloom or specialty types. These are really of interest to a lot of people nowadays because of the interesting colors of skin, of flesh, but they also tend to have very delicious flavor. Now we're going to talk a little bit about propagation. For many of you, you will recognize pieces of potato, and we predominantly use asexual propagation in propagating our potatoes. But we, in the potato breeding world, we use true potato seeds. And for those of you that might start your own tomatoes at home in your windowsill, true potato seed is actually smaller. And in one of those little berries that you may notice up on the top of your potato plants, there can be up to 250 seeds. Each of them, because of the complex genetic nature of potato, can be different. And so out of the 250 brother and sisters, they might have some similarities, but at the same time they could vary in color, in maturity, in robustness of the vine, as well as in their green stems, anthocyanins maybe in the stems, making them a little bit more red or more purple, and then also for flower colors. Typically, though, what we are using for propagating potatoes are tubers, and again, this would be what we would call clonal or vegetative propagation. And it's very important when we are propagating our potatoes, and hopefully you're all going to go home and get started on this project here in the next 10 days if the soil temperatures warm up. But we would want to use maybe a whole potato that would be right around 2 ounces. The important feature, of course, is the eye. And this is 3-ounce tuber. We could cut into 3 or 4 pieces if we have a limited number of seed potatoes, but for most growers, they would call this a splitter, and they would cut it in half, and then that would form a nice 1.5 to 2.5 ounce seed piece. The more eyes we have, the more potential stems we have. So again, it might depend, your seed piece size may depend upon what your end use is. If you want a lot of little tubers, then you will want to use larger seed pieces and hope that you'll have more eyes that sprout. Just a little bit of background and probably a lot of refresh or memory refreshment for people. Potato is a cool season crop. We should not plant though until our soil temperatures reach about that 45 degree temperature base. Anything colder than that, and our tubers will basically be just like they're sitting in our seed growers' storages. They will not be as interested in growing. When we can get that soil temperature closer to 50 to 55 degrees, then our potatoes will wake up and they will tend to be able to battle pathogens more quickly. They'll be able to heal more quickly if you've cut them. Potatoes have a high water requirement, and that's because of their shallow root system. They have a root system that is only about 12 inches deep, or 12 to 18 inches deep, so not very deep compared to many of our small grains crops or our grasses or things like that. That's why we need to be able to provide about 18 inches of precipitation, whether that's in our moisture, in the form of rain or irrigation water. So a well-drained soil is preferred. Obviously here on the eastern edge of North Dakota, we tend to have heavier soils, but we can produce some very beautiful potato crops. I have a couple pictures here of potatoes in rows. We tend to plant our potatoes in rows that are 30 to 36 inches apart. And again, this is personal preference, or if you're growing for farmer's market, you may have a small planter, so it may depend on what your planter, how your planter was built. And for most varieties, we would be spacing them 10 to 12 inches apart, and we need to plant them about 4 inches deep. And for pests, a lot of you are aware of these. In the top picture is the type of damage that Colorado potato beetle can do. That middle picture is a picture of the Colorado potato beetles. Off in the lower right-hand corner is a picture of green peach aphids. They enjoy potato, and they do spread some of the potato viruses. Another pest problem, of course, is weeds, and the picture here, if I remember correctly, is of some of our nightshades, but a lot of weeds that you'll see in your garden will you'll also find in your rows of potatoes: lamb's quarters, kochia, purslane particularly. But the difficult one is the nightshades, because the herbicides that we would use to kill the nightshades could kill the plants, our potato plants. Some other pests that you may be aware of, you might see deer digging around in your potatoes. Occasionally there will be mice, just some small vermin. Diseases, the most important one is the one pictured in the lower right-hand corner, late blight. That was the cause of the Irish potato famine and why many of our relatives are here. I don't have a picture of early blight, but even given the names late blight and early blight, you would think that that means that the blights come in late and early in the season. However, it's actually the opposite. Early blight tends to take advantage of shortages of nitrogen or dry soils, things like that. It causes spotting of the leaves. They kind of get that bullseye appearance. Verticillium wilt is one that you might see, and that's in the top left-hand picture there. It reminds me of fire blight from trees, but obviously this is in our herbaceous type of crop. But if you have planted a lot of solanaceous crops in a given area, we'll tend to see more verticillium wilt the more times that you have those crops planted. And lastly is the viruses. You'll see unthrifty plants. They might have a mottling, and they will not produce large tubers in most cases. And then I think our last one has to do with physiological disorders. You might see some of these. Most of them are caused because of uneven watering patterns. So that was my take-home message for this slide. We tend to see second growth or knobs like we have in that upper right-hand corner, growth cracks in the middle picture, and then later after we've harvested our potatoes and cut them open, you might see those little areas of hollow heart where people tease about the areas to put their butter. The picture in the lower right-hand corner is of a black spot bruise, and again, we usually can't see those unless we or until we're cutting them. And our final slide has to do with storage. When we harvest our potatoes, a lot of times we maybe aren't thinking about this, but we would want to cure them at about 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit for a week to 2 weeks at 90 to 95% relative humidity. This lets our skin set, so we'll have longer term storage. And then depending upon our end use, we would be storing at different temperatures. Most of us home that might be doing home horticulture, we would be storing our potatoes at 38 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. There are a number of slides at the end of the presentation. I just wanted to make those available to all of you because the 3 cultivars, Dakota Trailblazer, Dakota Pearl, and Dakota Ruby, are releases from our NDSU breeding program. And I thought if you had a couple of slides describing some of their characteristics, many of you might be familiar with Red Norland and Yukon Gold. So I thought it would be a good comparison to have those in your arsenal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susie. And this information on all these cultivars is available in your notes. We do have time for a couple questions here. One of them, Susie, is this gardener says that they've heard that you should purchase your seed potatoes rather than saving potatoes from the previous year's crop, or using potatoes that you've purchased for food that have sprouted.
That is exactly true. We try to persuade people from saving their potatoes from the previous year. On the pest slide, when I was talking about viruses, or maybe it was on the disease slide, the viruses, that things like aphids vector, also some leafhoppers will vector different viruses. They carry through because of the vegetative propagation. They will carry through into those potatoes. If we purchase certified seed potatoes, and our grocery stores and garden centers work with certified seed potato growers to provide this, then we are assured of having a smaller amount of virus present, or other diseases, bacterial ring rot or late blight, or things like that. The reason why we try to discourage you from thinking that you can save potatoes from the grocery store that may have sprouted underneath your kitchen sink or wherever we tend to store small quantities of potatoes, is because a lot of those potatoes actually have been exposed to what we call sprout inhibitors. And so while they may peep underneath your sink, they may actually not develop into a full plant when we take them out to the garden and think that it's spring and that they're going to grow. So that's why we try to discourage you from using potatoes from the grocery store.
Okay, that's interesting. How about if you see a green spot on your potatoes, is that from being exposed to the sun? And is that poisonous?
Another excellent question. The potato does, when it gets exposed to light, it doesn't have to just be from the sun, but a lot of times when you're digging your potatoes, you might notice an area where maybe there was a crack in the soil where your potatoes tend to be more green. It also can happen if you store your potatoes where people can leave the lights on. If you have a root cellar, but you have a light bulb down there, and one of your kids forgets to turn the light off, all of that top layer of potatoes in your bin probably would be green. Is it dangerous? We do have, what happens in these areas is we have chlorophyll resulting, because the potato, while we call it a tuber, it's really a modified stem. So anything that happens in a stem happens to the tuber as well. So when we expose the tuber to light, it turns green. The other thing that happens is there is a buildup of what we term glycoalkaloids. And the glycoalkaloids are utilized in our foliage as a protective mechanism from insect pests like Colorado potato beetle. But we, as humans, if we ingest too much, we could have a stomach ache. If we would consume a lot of green potatoes that were high in glycoalkaloids and didn't know what we could be allergic to it, in the most severe cases, we could have food poisoning-like symptoms, but potentially even die if we consume too much. That's why we discourage you from eating potato fruit.
Okay, how about, since you are the potato breeder for North Dakota State University, give me a recommendation for a good fingerling variety.
Okay, an excellent question. And one of these days, hopefully we will have some good fingerlings from the NDSU Potato Breeding Program. But in the interim, because we don't, you'll have to go to your heirlooms. There are a myriad of fingerlings, and they are different. There's French fingerling. It has a soft yellow flesh color, very tasty. There's red thumb. It has red skin and kind of a reddish pink flesh, if I remember. And maybe red thumb has white flesh, but there is a I don't think it's called raspberry either. Those are the two that I guess I'm most familiar with, though, are French fingerling and red thumb.
Or Russian,
and there's well, yeah, Russian banana. And that too, if I don't remember if that has yellow flesh or if it's just more of a creamy flesh, but those are the main ones that you probably would be able to find in a garden catalog.
And that brings us to the point, is where can you buy the North Dakota seed potatoes?
Okay. There, it kind of depends upon your garden center or your grocery store who is doing the purchasing. All of the potato producers use and I didn't think to bring one, a seed directory. And so in that certified seed directory, there is a list of the grower, of each cultivar, and then also the grower or farmer that produced the acreage of seed potatoes. But depending upon your garden store, I know Gurney's has bought seed potatoes out of both Minnesota as well as North Dakota producers. And it's a matter of getting the word out that you're interested in those varieties. If you are interested in small quantities of something, sometimes we here at NDSU are able to help out with a couple of pounds to give you a start. And then we can give you names, if you want to buy 100 pounds. It kind of depends upon the volume.
Is that directory available online?
The directory is available online. You need to go to the North Dakota State Seed Department website and look for the potato tabs, and the directory is available there.
How about, what does the term specific gravity mean to a home gardener?
Okay, I should have defined specific gravity better when I was talking about it. We use how do I describe it? It would be an indirect measure of the dry matter content. And when we measure specific gravity, we will weigh the potatoes in air, and then we will weigh them in water. There's a little mathematical formula, and we'll come up with a number that is usually 1.0656, for example. And that would be something for the fresh market. So it'd have a very waxy texture and it's a little bit lower of a number. Then we might have a potato that would be a 1.090. That might be a chip processing potato, or it might be one of the more elongate types that we would use for French fry processing, but would make lovely, fluffy baked potatoes as well. So it's a indirect measure of dry matter content or starch content.
Okay. Lastly, do you have any wisdom about growing sweet potatoes in North Dakota? Oh,
excellent question. And I have been one of those ones that has wanted to play with this a little bit. I don't have any experience growing them here, but I know some potato producers from North Dakota, but that raise regular potatoes in other parts of the country. I also know that some of our neighbors to the north in southern Manitoba are able to grow sweet potatoes. Apparently they are just in one of those banana belts. And lastly, and maybe you would be able to visit with the folks up at the Williston station, the Ernie French station, Kyla Spakal possibly would be able to help. I know that the last couple of years have been doing some trialing with the different sweet potato varieties. So they might be our best bet on how to figure out how to grow them in North Dakota.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just throw in my comment here about sweet potatoes. This is never going to be a sweet potato center of the world. We just don't have the heat for that.
No.
And so they're a fun crop to grow, but have some low expectations.
I think I would have to echo that.
You'll be happier that way. Okay. Thank you, Susie, for your presentation. And thank you so much for donating those potatoes. We're all going to be eating Dakota potatoes this fall and enjoying them. So thank you again. And that's it for tonight's Spring Fever Garden Forum. Well, thank you everybody for your participation, and we'll see you all next week. Same time, same bat channel. Good night.